It's Ryuko versus Gamagori in my review of Kill La Kill Episode 9. Tournament Arc. Tournament Arc. Tournament Arc. Tournament Arc. Tournament Arc! If there was a way that this series could physically manifest a giant microphone to just drop on a stage after an episode ends, this would be the best. But in all fairness, Kill La Kill Episode 9, best episode of the series so far, in my humble opinion. Holy crap, I love Gamagori. He has got one of the most hilarious, overblown powers I have ever seen in an anime series. And it is incredibly unique. And you know what? It is also fucking hilarious. This is one of the most sexual innuendo episodes I have ever seen in my entire life. And you know what? It makes sense. This is the guys that created Panty and Stalking. I cannot do this episode any sort of justice. All I can say is that it was infinitely entertaining and one of the best episodes of anime that I have seen this year. I'm just going to talk about some of the highlights of it. Before I get to the actual battle of Ryuko and Gamagori, they actually do go a little bit more into the backstory of Gamagori in this one. There's another flashback of him fighting against Satsuki Kiryuin, and it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's basically the moment where she decides to recruit him for her brand new school. And the scene is great because you get to see, like, when they're first fighting for the first time, he has this, like, armor pieces all over his body. And she takes him out without even, like, drawing her sword. And I especially love the scene where she just, like, jams him right in the chest with it. And all of the armor pieces on his body just explode off. And it just looks incredible. And what's great about the scene is it also shows Gamagori's intense resolve. Because he doesn't want to bow down to Satsuki at all in this battle. And even as he's about to fall to the ground, he's still letting the hilt of this sword, like, jam into his chest before he'll even go on his knees. But let's get to the main battle. Gamagori's powers were hinted at in the last episode, and we get to see them in full here. He goes through this huge transformation sequence where essentially he looks like a big mummified gimp. That's the only way I can explain it. And god damn it, it is hilarious. He has a ball gag in his mouth. But it gets better. Oh, it gets better. Ryuko decides she's not going to attack Gamagori at first because she realizes that the whole point of his suit is that he takes punishment from people, he gets hurt, and then he absorbs their power, and then he just releases it tenfold against them. And this is where the twist comes into play. He reveals that he doesn't need anyone to attack him for this to work, as he can simply attack himself. So this is how Gamagori's powers work. Essentially, his entire suit is wrapped up in these giant whips or tentacles. I think he calls them the whips of love, just one of the very first innuendos you'll see, but essentially he goes on to explain that he can release these from his body and he can beat himself up with his own whips, and that'll cause him to grow large and large until finally he climaxes. What's awesome about this is when you get to see his full form released, it looks awesome. The only way I can describe it is Gimp Iron Man. It still has the ball gag, it still looks awesome, it's got spikes on his arms, he's got the tentacles flying all over the place, and he ends up literally whipping Ryuko's ass. And I'm not even kidding, there's a scene where they really do focus on her ass as he's whipping it. Describing the rest of the battle is almost too difficult to do, but as it's going on, we get to see it gets even more intense. Gamagori displays he has more techniques. He actually does eventually remove the ball gag from his mouth, and then he has like these giant like rings that are covered in spikes that he just throws around all over the place, and he wraps up Ryuko with those. But Gamagori's best technique is by far one of the craziest, most hilarious anime attacks I've ever seen. And you know what? It's just his dick. It's his big schlong. It just fucking smacks out and rams right into Ryuko and it's covered in spikes. I'm not exaggerating. He beats her up with his dick. His giant dick that's the size of a log. When I saw this scene, I nearly fell out of my chair. And I'm not just saying that to be funny. No, I reared back, started laughing, and had to catch myself on the wall when I saw him use this technique. One of the funniest things I have ever seen, and at the same time, somehow badass. And then he even has this, like, giant press that has these molds that he says are in the shape of a perfect student. They kind of look like Mako. It's pretty funny. But he just, like, slams them on top of her and just tries to crush her with these. And then he actually brings Ryuko into himself and wraps her up, like, in his, like, giant, weird, mummified suit and tries to crush her from the inside. But this ends up being his downfall, because Ryuko displays she has another brand new technique with her Senketsu, the Senketsu Senjin, and she covers her entire suit with blades, and she's able to cut herself out, and she is able to defeat Gamagori. I'm not going to say anymore. You need to see the rest of the episode. It is incredible. So if it's not clearly apparent, I love this episode of Kill la Kill. It finally featured the epic confrontation between Ryuko and Gamagori, a fight that I've been wanting to see since that character was introduced in the very first couple minutes of the first episode, and I gotta say it was incredibly satisfying. I loved his transformation sequence. I loved that, when I first saw the mummified form, I was like, oh, that's all it's going to be. But then I remembered, yeah, he does sort of go through this big explosive transformation, and it looked awesome. Like I said, it looks a lot like Iron Man. So aside from the incredibly badass animation and really cool action sequences, the one thing I think I liked most about this episode was truly the creativity of it. I've never seen anything like this. And when an anime does that, I think it's a really big deal. And, this episode alone, combined with the ones that came before it, is already solidifying why this is probably my favorite series of the year. I cannot get enough of it. I'm starting to really love it. And I want a whole comedy series about Mako and her family. They are just freaking hilarious. I love those guys. That's one member of the Elite Four down and 3 to go. It's only a matter of time before Ryuko gets to go up against Satsuki Kiryuin. Badass episode, incredible animation, great music as always, great characters, just a lot of surprise moments, and the amount of creativity in the hilarious sexual innuendo make this an incredible episode for me. 10 out of 10 across the board. Check this one out. So I loved the battle between Ryuko and Gamagori, absolutely my favorite episode of the series thus far, but how did you guys feel about this week's episode of Kill la Kill? You can let me know with your comments below. You can tell me about your favorite moments, maybe some things you didn't like, maybe what you're looking forward to seeing from the future of the series. And remember guys, before you leave, hit the like button! Give this video a thumbs up. It's truly one of the best ways to help our videos. And you can see what we got floating around right up top. So, I'll see you next time guys. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.